Danny, what is going on? Happy you're here and to talk to you. Welcome to the Adventure Round Podcast. How are you, sir?
Good. Pleasure to be with you, Rob.
Hey, I'm stoked. We've been having this one in the books for a while, and I'm beyond excited because of everything you present, what you've created. Before we get into National Park Geek, I'd love to know, who is Danny Gross, what you're all about, and what's your little story and background.
Well, I'm a designer by profession, and I also teach college. So those have been my predominant professions before I started National Park Geek. That was a bit over 5 years ago, August 5 years ago, that National Park Geek got started. Wow. I'm just trying to be creative every day and
for sure.
Share the goodness.
Yeah. So National Park Geek, by the time this episode comes out, I mean, you guys are hundreds of thousands of strong on Instagram. I mean, creeping up on 1 million. And there's other avenues I don't even know exist. And apart from that, what you're actually doing is really impressive. You're in like a lot of national parks. Like, you guys have a brand people love. I mean, I've got my water bottle right here, like with a sticker. Before I even knew before I even knew you had an Instagram, like I saw this and I was drawn to pay the $2-3 to buy it. Like, you guys you're everywhere in such a good way that I'm really honored to have you on. But before we get into that, what led you to your obsession or your fascination with national parks? Was there, looking back in your childhood, was that something that was introduced to you, or did you discover that more as an adult?
Actually both. I mean, I grew up in Baltimore, and I think my probably first national park experience was Fort McHenry. So I've been going to parks, small parks, big parks. As I moved out west here, about 99, I moved to Southern California. I had all these parks close by, Yosemite and Joshua Tree, Sequoia, Kings Canyon. So it just kind of continued to grow in the last 20 plus years.
Sure.
And so I think it's always been there. And the National Park Geek came out of many things, because as a designer, I'm always looking for a way to be creative. I love photography. Instagram seemed like a natural fit to kind of share the beauty of the parks, to help people to get to these places and learn about these places. I'm of the philosophy that the more people know about these places, the more they're going to love them, the more they're going to support them, and the more they're going to encourage others to care for these places
and protect them.
Work with their Congress to protect places, fund these places. So that's always been, and it's still part of my mission with National Park Geek. And in many ways, I think that's probably the most important part of the mission.
Right.
It's to continue that story of letting people know about, all the parks, not just the big ones, but, these small jewels, these beautiful parks that are just incredible.
Yeah, and everything that's in the national park system, right? And you guys talk about more than just the 62 plus national parks. And on that note, so if you could give us a quick, I would say 95% of people listening to this podcast, Adventure Bound, are going to know what national parks are, but give us a quick overview. What is a national park versus national forest versus national monument versus a wilderness, and just kind of everything you've learned over the years?
Well, national parks, I think we're at 62 now, and they're designated by Congress, and they get a little bit different funding. But then there's another, I think we're up to 420 now. Dwight D. Eisenhower Memorial opened up this weekend in Washington. And there are these smaller places. Some of them are monuments, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, someplace like Fort McHenry or Fort Sumter, where these battlefield sites, Antietam, Gettysburg, Manassas. And then we have national seashores, national lake shores, and a multitude of smaller things in between, from presidential homes to Native American sites, Casa Grande, those kind of places that are just incredibly rich with history.
Right.
So these smaller sites tend to fill in the history of our country, and they cover everything from women's rights to civil rights to Latino rights to the internment of Japanese citizens during World War II. I mean, these are important stories that need to be told. To Pearl Harbor, to these places are just incredible not only just for what they are and the history they tell, but many of them are in just these incredibly gorgeous settings also.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about the Japanese internment. So I just moved to the Pacific Northwest outside of Seattle, and just last weekend we were up in Bainbridge Island, and they had the place that they took 270, I want to say, Japanese American citizens, like 1942,
Yes.
away from their homes and took them all over California and parts of the West. And like I definitely knew that was a thing coming from the East Coast, but it was I don't know if it was a national. It's something obviously national park system, because there was a national park ranger there. But it's just one of those classic examples of, hey, we did this thing that was great or this thing that was horrible, and here we're gonna like recognize it and talk about it and throw it out there and protect it, right? And I thought that was really just another example of something that, and if you Google where that is, I mean, we're talking, I don't know, 5-10 acres, if that. Nothing to write home about. But the story there was what was valuable.
Correct. And I think that's what the Park Service does best, is they tell our story as a country. And they don't just cherry pick one thing. They tell all of our story, and they're continuing to do that, and they're continuing to expand the stories that they tell, even within existing sites. They're like, hey, we didn't talk about such and such a thing. That's an important part. Let's bring that into the story for this particular park. So, I mean, I encourage everybody to get to Yosemite and Yellowstone and the Tetons. You have to go there.
Right.
But I think along the way, and everyone has one of these quote small parks almost in their backyard that they can get to, and again, learn about their local area, learn about the history of our country. And I think the more we understand about who we are as a country, I think the better off we're going to be in the future.
Yeah, very, very true. Leading up to National Park Geek, and you kind of talked about your design background. What was, looking back on the moment in time when you said, hey, here's this thing called Instagram. Here's, when did the logo come into thing? When did you, put the pen on the paper and say, this is going to be something I'm going to really get into?
Well, there was a couple things leading up to its formation in the beginning. I was at Joshua Tree for a meetup. An Instagram meetup, and I realized, wow, I'm not the only person like that. There's a lot of other people like me who love Instagram, love photography, and like to get together. And I had been using that hashtag National Park Geek just because I made it up. And a friend goes, I like that hashtag. And things started to click. And then as a designer, I got into designing the logo. And the ideas and the philosophies behind it were already there, so it was just kind of putting it together. Yeah. And of course, I started with many of my own photographs, and then started building that Instagram following. And knock on wood, it's been great, and over 500,000 at this point.
Oh yeah, well over that, if I'm not mistaken.
It's been an incredible journey, it really has.
Yeah, and I only bring that up because it's. I hate to use the word influencer, but I mean, you're a force to be reckoned with. I mean, the brand you've created is very, very powerful. That's why we're talking today. But I love that it represents so much more than you, Danny, in your spare red room on Instagram. Like you're taking these photos of people and you're sharing them with the world, and they're obviously beautiful photos of places like Yosemite and Tetons. You hit the nail on the head. You got to go check it out for sure. But other places that I didn't know otherwise existed. Today, in a nutshell, we're recording this the fall of 2020. What is National Park Geek to you?
I think to me it really is a movement. Going back to the idea of sharing what the parks are about, the park system, allowing people to inspire to go to these places, to make them want to experience this beautiful country, this beautiful world that we have, and again, learn some history along the way and learn about who we are as a country. I think that's what it is, and really that's my main objective as I post every day, is to inspire people to love these places, to protect these places, to encourage others to love them, protect them, treat them right, leave no trace.
Yes,
and bring this whole thing together. Because I think without these places and without the nature that are preserved in these places, it's gonna get pretty ugly out there.
Yeah.
And these places are incredible, and even the smallest place where you think, oh, it's just some sand in the desert, and you get there and you go, oh my God, this is incredible. I mean, I remember going to White Sands for the first time, And it was like, okay, it's White Sands. I've seen pictures. It's going to be kind
Sure.
of fun. And you get there, and the experience was 100 times better than I could ever experience. I ever thought of.
Yeah.
It was just so incredible. The texture of the sand, the feel of it, the light, the color, the seeing how the dunes were forming. It was just, mind blowing. And it's just a pile of sand in the desert.
Right.
So these places will surprise you with their stories, with their history, with their natural beauty. They're incredible.
Right.
And I think that's an important part, is to let people know these places actually exist. They actually belong to you as a citizen of this country, and you need to experience it. I mean, don't wait till it's too late. Go. And if it is, I know it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, I know you have a little boy, and you've been taking him to parks since he was born.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredible to get him going.
Right.
But if you didn't start when you were 1, it's okay. Start now.
Exactly.
Start today.
Yeah.
Start tomorrow.
And that's, I mean, I could probably speak for both of us. We didn't start when we were babies. And back to I've said this on the podcast before, but, not that he's going to remember it, but I'll tell you what, like, he's more outdoorsy than his cousins right off the bat. I mean, he just like, today we're just like, and he's a boy and he like loves puddles and getting dirty and all that stuff. But I mean, just like we've been there and done that and exposed him to places. I want to just talk about, you kind of, God, you just like speak my language and you talk about like some sand in the desert. There's a Instagram account. Of course, I'm drawing a blank on the name. Another one, but Subpar Parks. Have you seen that? I'm sure you have.
Yes.
Yeah, where they play on that, right? It's like 1-star reviews of these national parks, and it's like just some sand on the desert. And I love that so much because it highlights such a funny point. Whether or not those 1-star reviews are real, I don't know. Like, well, they're real, but like whether the person made them were satirical or not. But you talk about that sand in the desert, right? And like, but thank God it's protected, because us as a human race / Americans, manifest destiny and all that stuff we've got in our background, like it would be industrialized. It would be something would have made a park out of it, not a like a slip and slide, like something would be put there that wouldn't otherwise be a wild place. And for like the word wild is what comes to mind, like just the fact. And the national park system isn't perfect, and national forests aren't perfect, but you know what? It's American. It's something. It's better than nothing. And thank God it exists. That's my take on it.
Oh my gosh! Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine this country without those places. And we were the first country to start establishing these ideas, and it has really, I think it's become an instrumental part of the fabric of our country, and it's something that needs to be continued and supported.
Yeah.
As we continue to grow as a country.
One of the things that I think you're alluding to, and the history, and we talked about being American, and it is very American, and we were the first to come up with the idea, but it's like we were our own worst enemy. If you go back, and a lot of you're much more versed than I am, but a lot of my knowledge of the national parks comes from the Ken Burns documentary, which I've watched like four times now, and it's so good, which, by the way, if you haven't checked it out, I think it's called America's National Parks.
Yeah.
Pretty basic, but Google that and type in Ken Burns. And this thing is incredible. It's like, 7 or 8 episodes that are an hour and a half, 2 hours long each.
Joy, yes.
It's so good, right? But one of my takeaways from that was talking about how, yes, the idea was inherently American, but we fought ourselves, go figure, tooth and nail. I mean, even like the Everglades, I'm thinking that comes to mind, right? Like the Everglades is a classic example. It's like we want to protect it because it was very unique and special, but it wasn't necessarily beautiful like the Rockies or the Yosemite. But other people are like, well, this is a swamp, quote unquote. And it's like the back and forth that we've had as a nation. And I just find it fascinating. And to this day, we're still fighting over it.
Yeah.
So,
and we're still in that with, the development of places we've never heard of.
Right.
They're still bringing new parks on board and new park sites and new, land that's being saved, and thank God for, many of the nonprofit associations that are supporting these things, that are purchasing additional land and adding it to parks, or purchasing land that becomes a park. And if you look at the history of the park system, the vast majority has come through individuals that have supported these completely unique places that have allowed it to become a park.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Rockefeller Jr. comes to mind with the Tetons, everything he did out in Acadia. And so on that note, right, obviously these, we talk about congressionally designated by Congress. The parks do get political and et cetera, et cetera. What would you say is, that aside, what is the biggest hurdle facing our national park system today in the 2020s moving forward?
Well, it's always been, I think funding is always a big issue. I know Congress just recently passed some new legislation, I think it's July, August, that is going to allow some additional funding to go into repairs and such, much needed repairs. So obviously funding is important, but it's letting everybody know that these are important places. There's millions of Americans who have never heard of some of these places, even someplace, large, or if they said Yellowstone, may know the name, but they have no idea where it is.
Or they think of the TV show now.
Yeah. So it's letting people know that these places are there for them.
Right.
They belong to them. So I think that's I think some of the biggest hurdles is letting all of our country know that no matter where you come from, no matter what your background, that these places belong to you and you need to experience them. And that beautiful view at the Tetons is yours.
Yeah.
We all own that as our heritage at this point,
What can we do? And there's been a lot of back and forth, or not back and forth, conversation this past year on, accessibility, and the word privilege is thrown around a lot. But that being said, I didn't know what Yellowstone was growing up because my parents didn't talk about it. And now I know exactly what it is and then some. But what can we do for people like you and me, people listening to this podcast, that know what national parks are, and they maybe live in a part of the country, or they live in a city where there's not a lot of accessibility, or it's not like you live in Jackson Hole, you can just go out and experience it, right?
Correct.
What can we do as the average person to help encourage others to get the outdoors?
Well, I think a lot of it is doing what we're doing here, just trying to spread the word. I think it's letting people know that, many of these places are right next to themselves. I live right outside of LA, and we have the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area.
Wow.
Which is, basically pure wilderness within the city of LA. They're mountain lions. There's mountain lions that live here, bears and deer and everything else that live within the city. Tragically, one of the mountain lions got hit on the freeway today. I saw a post. No. Yeah. They're trying to build a road across, or a bridge across, for the animals. Hopefully that'll be done sometime soon. But these places aren't as far away as one knows Yellowstone is. Right. There's these places, whether it be a battlefield nearby, or a lake shore, or a seashore. We talked about Maryland, and there's Assateague Island. Right. 100%. There's numerous places where we can go and experience the outdoors. Know that all are welcome. I've never, encountered anyone saying no. Yep. I think the parks are very accommodating and very welcoming, and they want all to visit to be welcome. Yes. Whether you're a citizen or not. The parks are a huge economic factor into travel and tourism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just domestically, but internationally.
Yeah.
And I think that's the cool thing about the parks, is they're here for all of us.
Yes. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head with the tourism aspect, going back to the history of it. That was the huge selling point, going back to the 10s and 20s and 30s of hey, let's protect them. Cool. We all can appreciate guys like John Muir, just protection for the sake of protection, which is I'm a huge supporter of. But at some point, you got to make the juice worth the squeeze, for the government, and the fact that we as in, I guess, it can protect them and equally, sustain that, supply income for the employees and ecotourism, all that great stuff, which of course now back to things like Instagram and YouTube, that is just exploding. COVID aside, it's just taken off. You talked about, and thanks for bringing it up, about just visiting those places that are not the big 15 or the big 20, right? I know there were mountain lions outside LA. I have no idea. Growing up, going back to Pennsylvania, we of course took field trips to Gettysburg, and I went to the Statue of Liberty, and I didn't know that they were national protected sites, but looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, there was a person with a funny looking hat on there, I guess. But what does getting outside And not just in these protected spaces, but just in general. What does getting outside, what does it do in your experience to the human body, right? Like, why should we all be encouraged to get outdoors more?
Well, I mean, I think John Muir said that, we need places to, paraphrasing, to breathe, places to
Yep.
enjoy. I mean, places that will rejuvenate our souls.
Yeah. To
And
play
that's
in
what
and pray in.
places do.
Yeah.
And they do it, whether it be a small place. I think of Cabrero down in San Diego, where they're telling the history of the Spanish coming into the area, but they also have these incredible little tide pools that you can wander through and connect with nature and stand next to the ocean and hear the waves crash, and watch
Wow.
the seagulls fly by. So even these small parks have these incredible places where we can go and just pause from the busy, hectic lives that we're all living. And God knows now with all that's going on with COVID and such, we need places.
Yeah.
So whether it be your local park or a national park site, it's important for us to have these places that we can go and refresh ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Agree 100%. Back to your journey with National Park Geek. How has that changed your life?
Well, I mean, it started out as kind of a thing to be it started out as a creative outlet.
Yeah.
Again, as a way to encourage others to love and support the parks, and it has turned into my full-time business at this point.
Yeah.
It's obviously been affected by COVID, because visitor center stores have been closed, and I sell the vast majority of my products to visitor center stores throughout the country. So it's been a tough time.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm encouraged by the daily Instagram, by the people, the images I see, by the support I'm gaining, and I'm going to keep at it. So it has become my life at this point.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
It is awesome. Oh, yes. I'm taking notes over here. Okay, how to grow Adventure Bound. Yeah, no, but it's great. I mean, honestly, it's
good logo and start a business.
Yeah, exactly. What? No one said it was that easy. No, obviously there's a lot behind the scenes there, so I appreciate that. But no, thanks for sharing. We talked about we've rattling off places left to right, and hopefully people are picking up where we're naming these places. But if you had, oh God, I hate to ask this question, but what would you say is your favorite national park? Do you have one that comes to mind?
I get asked all the time.
I figured you did.
All, of course, right?
Yeah,
That's what a dad says, right? Love all my kids. One place that every time is Yosemite.
Yeah.
Since I've gone, I never went when I was a kid. I didn't go until I moved to California since '99, and it just takes your breath away every time.
It does.
It's just one of those places that, it doesn't matter how many people are there. It will just blow your mind as to the incredible beauty, the scale, the size of this valley of, these towering walls of granite, the activities that are available there.
So many,
and whether it's just, when you want to take a little calm stroll, you can, or if you want to adventure out into the wilderness, you can. I mean, it's all there. And for me, it's, relatively convenient. It's, I don't know, say an 8-hour plus drive, but it's close enough that I can get there, right?
That's
I can
right.
go for a weekend.
It's there. Yeah.
So I'm lucky. I'm lucky with that sense. But I know it's there, and every time I go, it takes my breath away. And it's not the park I visit the most. I know that, but it's just one of those places that just, I've been there on like, a relatively busy, crowded time. And like 5 o'clock at night, everybody leaves. They're like half the people that are leaving the park. They're going back to San Francisco or wherever they came from. And I've been in the valley there at night and taking pictures of the stars.
Yeah.
And there's no one around.
Right.
No one. It's complete quiet. And you're like, wow, 2 hours ago you couldn't find a parking spot, and there were cars bumper to bumper and people everywhere, but now it's complete silence.
Yeah.
And it's just you and stars and the mountains and the sounds of the falls. And that's incredible. That's an incredible thing that can happen. And I think it's kind of why Yosemite just kind of gets to me every time.
I got to experience what you're talking about last time I was there with my sister, and she got a nicer camera. We're not photographers, but we were up at Tunnel View,
Hmm.
came back into the park because we were staying up in the high country. And so we came back at like 10 o'clock at night, and this was obviously pre-COVID and stuff. And literally, it was like what you said, there was like 7 photographers there, which compared to the 500 people in that small parking lot 3 hours prior, it's nothing. And,
Yep.
we did the whole like long shutter and just seeing El Cap. And I was like, holy crap, this is incredible. And I love that you mentioned that too with that's just one park, right? Yosemite. There's so many things to do. Like you can take the stroll, you can float down the river, you can be like Alex Honnold and try and, go rock climbing. And let's not forget the whole like Tuolumne Meadows up there. Like that was the first place I saw in Yosemite. Like it's a whole nother park. And that kind of brings up a point that I wanted to make about these parks. Like if you look at Yellowstone, like the big figure eight that it is, or even like Shenandoah, right? Like you got like the main road that drive, like the through road. That's just one aspect of these parks. And if you got to go and you're pressed for an afternoon or a weekend, then obviously you got to see the sights. But
Yes.
if you can camp and hike back in a few miles into the backcountry, and which, oh, by the way, Yosemite is like, it's like a big park if you look at it, right? Compared, like it was like I think it's over like 1 million acres. I'm just spitballing here. I think it's a good size, pretty circular park, and like 95% is like wilderness. Which
Correct.
blew my mind because you think of Yosemite, you think of like traffic jams, there's a Starbucks down the all this stuff. But my point is, you can still find that wild if you really want to in these national parks.
And I think you can find a wild even within that
Yes,
center of the valley. I said,
definitely.
in the middle of the night when I was there, it was just me.
Yeah,
I'm like, is there a bear somewhere? I mean, you're hearing a leaf moving. Is it a
right,
bear? There's literally nobody around except
right.
you. So yes, there are these complete wilderness spots. I mean, I can't tell you how many nights I spent in Joshua Tree, just going out there for the day, late in the evening, and just sit there and take pictures of the stars at
Yeah,
night. And literally, there's nobody around.
yeah,
It's just you.
right.
And there's just something incredible about being at one with, we'll say, Mother Nature there.
Yeah,
Being able to experience these places of incredible beauty. So I encourage everybody to stay after dark, experience the evening hours in the park, to, get away from it, wait a couple minutes, let the crowd get past, you'll find your peace, you'll find your solitude in these places.
That's awesome advice. Yeah, it's actually one good thing I would say with COVID is it's the parks have had a chance to breathe. At least the first, April, May, June, probably because I know, but stories of like Yosemite were coming through about the bears are creeping in, not because there's people and food there, but because like the people are gone and maybe the mountain lions, and that's just something that comes to mind about how these parks are having a chance, which also reminds me of places like Yellowstone, which gets that every couple months, like when winter comes around, which another great time to visit. When I think the big takeaway here is like go in the off season, go in the early morning and the late evening, because you're going to experience a whole different place for sure.
Correct. Yes.
What would you say? So, because I got to pick your brain on this. What is maybe not your best secret from Yosemite, but what's a really good pro tip about something that besides what you would find on a Google sheet or Google search from Yosemite? If you had to give, hey, you're going to Yosemite for a day, try and check this out if you can.
I'm going to actually say what I've already said is stay after dark.
Yeah, that's true. You did. That's a good one.
I mean, to be in that valley and be in, these fields, and you can go and stand in the middle of a field with no one around you, and you can just see everything. And with the exception of maybe the one passing car, you're completely alone.
Yeah.
And to hear the falls, to feel the cool mountain air. Those are incredible experiences that will live with you and will in many ways change your life. But I think for I would say take a trail. Just find one and just go. Take time to pause. I know we're all trying to see all quote the sights, but it's okay to stop for a little bit to relax and let nature talk to you without feel like we're always in a rush. I mean, that's the reason we go to these big grand parks is to get away from the rush. So we can't forget to stop and take that pause and let that rush get out of us and let nature rush in.
Do you think, like, is there a fine line with the national parks, like how we've developed it over the last 80 to 100 years, with the right amount of protection, with the right amount of services provided, or bathrooms, or Starbucks, or what have you? I mean, where's the sweet spot?
I don't honestly. I think the parks are doing a pretty fine job at it. I mean, many people would want pure nature and get rid of everything, but that's not going to allow all of us. It's not going to be as inclusive as it could be.
Yeah.
Um, so I think they've done a pretty good balancing act for the most part. Like we said, we've been in the Yosemite Valley, and you're right. There's services there. There's a restaurants and there's a hotels and stuff
Right.
like that, campsites. But again, if you don't want that, you want pure wilderness. It's a half hour up the road,
Right.
and you're in some place that no one is.
Right.
So I think they've done a fairly good job of being able to balance it, to be inclusive. I mean, I know many people don't want to camp, so they stay at a hotel, and there's nothing wrong with staying at a hotel. And in fact, many of these hotels are incredible jewels, historically, and they're
Right.
just beautiful places that I would say, even if you are a camper, you should experience some of these places.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're just incredible.
For sure. No, you bring up a good point, and that it leads me to something that's been like, it comes up when I talk about national parks, because we don't all have the opportunity, whether that's financially or just maybe like the inkling to go camping. Like, I don't want to do it. Like, me personally, like, I like it, but there are times I'm like, you know what, I just want to get a hotel or a motel or whatever, sleep in the car. Yeah. And I love that all those things get you to the national park. It doesn't matter where you stay, as long as you get there. And I think that, for me, is the biggest lesson, is like, if you've never experienced the national parks, if you're listening to this, if you heard your uncle talk about it for years and years, like, what is he talking about? But like, you need to go there and experience it for yourself, because once you do, you just can't put it in words. I mean, it's just something that you have to see. Like the Grand Canyon, classic example. Like, I've seen photos my whole life, and you're like, cool, really cool, definitely should be protected. Then you go there and you're just like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
On the north and the south rim. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So. And you can camp there, or you can stay at a hotel on the rim. And I think both are great experiences. And, no one's going to the hotel, spending the whole time in the hotel. They're now still getting out within the park, getting back to nature. They're going to the visitor center. They're learning. So these parks provide those opportunities. And like I said, whether you stay at a hotel or you're camping or sleeping in your car, I think they're all relevant and as a way of getting you into that mindset. So go experience your parks and do what's comfortable for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. We kind of alluded to it earlier, but it's one of those, I think the takeaway for me here listening is that when you experience it, and certainly when you share it with your close family and friends, then you are kind of drawn to protect it more than you would have otherwise, right? It's like, like you could love trees, right? And then see a photo of sequoia, be like, that's awesome. But then you go there and you're like, these trees are incredibly huge. They're amazing. Like, where do I need to give $5? Where do I need to like call my congressman? Like, just it, when we know it's there, and back to what you're doing, National Park Geek, so thank you. When we know it's there, we can then be like, oh, that's a cause that I support or I don't support. But at least now you know about it, because otherwise you just would have been head down your 9-to-5 cubicle and living your life, and then not knowing that it's going to be taken away.
Yes. And I think you're right. I mean, standing under the sequoias, mind blowing.
It is.
When you can actually see in the size of these things, whether, they're incredible. And they've been there for thousands of years. And you're kind of like, well, they've lived here for thousands of years. What right do I have to even do anything to these things, right? I mean, I have no right to touch them or cut them or any of that. So I think it brings back to that idea of good environmental stewardship when you get there. So that idea expands not just with the sequoias, but other protected lands or other lands of forest and old growth that need to be protected. Because we know we're going through climate change. We need these green places. We need the trees to make new oxygen, to take in the CO. We need to protect these oceans. And by experiencing them, I think we're more apt to do that. It's not just something that's a picture on a page or a story that you've told or a movie that you saw. This is something that you can relate to personally.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when parks become personal, that's when, we're doing the right thing and we're starting to protect these lands of ours.
Definitely. I think it's you talked about the mentality, like what right do we have? And that's so true. Back to Sequoia, you go to there and you're like, wow, this is incredible. How could I ever want to cut this down? And yet, wouldn't you figure, 100 years ago, we were doing just that. We were cutting them down by the hordes and or redwood. It's just it's
Hmm.
like, and knowing that I'm getting into the weeds here and getting a little geeky, no pun intended, but like, knowing that these trees were not even that good, like they splinter when you cut them. But it just, I think that back then, 100 years ago, especially with going back to just us being Americans, of like, we need to like tame this land, we need to conquer, take what's ours. Like, it exists for us. And like, okay, like, yeah, sure, because like we need to like progress the human race, but at the same time, like there's definitely a fine line. And now that we're in the 2000s and like the world's not getting any bigger and there's only one, and we're quickly
Yes.
realizing how these incredible places are disappearing. And I'm even of the mindset, like I'm from Pennsylvania, right? Like there's not a single national park there, proper park. There's like, I think, Allegheny National Forest, and of course you got Gettysburg and a couple of the national things, but no national park. And I'm thinking to myself, why isn't there just a national park, almost like a Shenandoah? Like, why isn't there just like this big swath of land that's protected? I know the answer because we populated it 300 years ago, and everyone owns private land. But my point is, it's not Yosemite, it's not Yellowstone, it's not the Everglades, it's just land. But I still think it needs to be protected, and I love that we, like I said before, we're not perfect. We haven't done it perfect, but at least we've done it. I think we've done a pretty darn good job as a country, as a government in the last 100 years, and made plenty of mistakes. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me started about Hetch
Yeah.
Hetchy and Yosemite and the dam, etc. Or talk to pick your native people, talk about how land was not appropriated them the correct way. But at least it's something, and at least
Yes.
we as a people are
Well,
making an
we're
effort.
always trying to make a more perfect union,
We
right? I
are,
mean, we're trying to get
exactly.
better.
Yeah.
And I think that's when people love these places and understand these places, uh, they're more apt to try to push for that, right? They're
Yep.
more apt to say, hey, build your city over there. Let's keep this the way it is. And yes, we're going to maybe tame it a little bit and build a road, and
Yeah.
maybe there's going to be some kind of quote commercialization, but we can balance it out. And the park services, I think, a pretty good
They
job
do.
of trying to
They do.
balance that out.
Yeah.
And they're not perfect, and they're the first to admit it. But I think overall my park experiences have been,
They
rather
have. Yeah.
good. I mean, and I like there's not this building that feels out of place for the most. Most of it,
Right.
they're working the architecture. They're making buildings kind of fit into the environment, and they're trying to make it feel like it's one. And there's many times where, some of the architectural elements actually help make the park, I think, better. I mean, you look at like Yellowstone Lodge. I mean, what an
Oh
incredible
yeah.
thing. I mean, you just go,
Beautiful.
you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, this is crazy. They built this out of, you know, trees, and that has become symbolic, I think, of the park itself as
Yeah.
much as,
Right.
something like Old Faithful.
Well, and it kind of goes back to what we talked about before about the different types of wilderness, national forest or wilderness, or it's
Hmm.
like, you can't have by the nature of having a national park with like, okay, if you're going to have ecotourism and you're going to bring people in to see this land that is theirs and then use that money to then continue to protect it, you got to have some sort of infrastructure. You got to have the roads, you got to have, public
Yes.
restrooms. And then of course you want to have food. It doesn't, but where you draw the line, like for me, like talking about like a gondola to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, big no, right? Because like, why would you
Yes.
want to do that? But then some people think, so there's definitely that back and forth. But at the same time, that's the beauty of it is a national park. There are wildernesses, there are national forests where you can, like, he doesn't want to ride a four-wheeler in the mountains of Montana. Like, that's awesome, right? Like,
Yes.
don't, not appropriate in the Tetons necessarily, but like, I'm glad we have places that you can go and do that, because it's
Sure.
allowed. And so I just want to kind of talk about that with the different types of land designations that not everyone is created equally, or not everyone's with the same purpose, but I'm just more rambling. I'm excited that it exists. But we talked about a lot about the national park service. And you said they'd be the first to admit that they're not perfect. Great, and I'm part of the military myself, and we got a lot of problems with us as well. But that being said, for everyone listening, for most of us, we're not part of the National Park Service. What can we do to be good stewards in national parks and forests and other wild places?
Well, I think number one is that the idea of leave no trace. Those principles of leave it as you found it, take nothing but photos. To you pack it in, pack it out, pick up the trash. Try to leave it a little bit better than you found it. If you see some trash, pick it up. Um, Dispose of it
Yeah.
properly. Those are all going to be important things that we can all do to help protect these places. Supporting the nonprofit associations that work with the parks. Every park has an association of some sort that's working with them, and they fund a lot of the activities that the junior ranger programs, and they help fund certain facilities repairs or renovations, programs and videos, and most of that is supported through these nonprofit association visitor center stores, the bookstores type of
Right.
thing. So those are always great ways that you can give back to the park, and you can get something back by visiting the visitor center store, or joining their association and making a donation. They do an incredible amount of work to protect these parks,
Yeah.
because the government doesn't fund everything,
Right.
and these associations pick up the slack, and they're I work with them, and they're incredibly dedicated people. They're incredibly passionate about the parks and our public lands.
Yeah.
And that's one way we can do that. And no, I can't get to Yellowstone tomorrow, but I could go and make a donation to the Yellowstone Forever,
Right.
or buy something from their online store, or go to the Saguaro and go to the Western National Park Association, who supports them. There's a multitude of ways that we can do that locally to affect something that's far away, or we visit it once, or we aspire to visit, and that type of thing. But I think it's when we get to these places is to love and respect them.
Yeah.
Treat them like yours, because they are yours. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? I mean, you wouldn't
Yeah.
trash your own house. Why are you going to trash somebody?
That.
You're going
Yeah.
to trash your house outside, as you wouldn't do it at home.
And that's the thing that it just irks me so much. My grandpa used to say it cranks my tractor, but like the trash, man, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, my only time hiking Half Dome, but my first time I think to the valley, my buddy and I did it, and on our way down, we made a very conscious effort to pick up trash. Okay, this is Half Dome, right? Like with
Yes.
whatever the water, and you're very familiar with it, but like huge waterfalls, and like in the middle of the summer, right? We walked away with we had our hiking backpacks on, and every single spare space and pocket in our packs were full of crap, almost literally. I mean, but like trash, like socks, like just stuff that it wasn't even just like, oh, this is a little like, bubblegum wrapper that somebody maybe dropped. No, I'm talking like full on trash, and it just pissed me off because, yeah, the person that left it, but then every other 100 people that didn't even bother to pick it up because it's not their trash, but somehow it's your park. So the two don't go hand in hand. And I think for me, this is my little soapbox, but like, when you go there, like it is yours. And we're going there to experience the wilderness and the beauty. And it only stays that way if we keep it that way, because not even talking about the commercialization of people trying to monetize these parks in a really bad way, but just human nature. Like, we don't belong in a wild place if we want to keep it wild. Like, our nature is to make it domesticated. So we have to do every effort we can to keep it clean and keep it like looking nice. And for me, that's the biggest thing. It's just, that's such a simple thing we can all do, is just be cognizant of the trash that you leave. And then of course, try and pick it up when you're hiking around.
Yeah, I keep whenever I go on a hike, I take a spare trash bag with me.
You have to.
For that. If I see something, I pick it up. That way I'm not worried about it on display. I can pick it up, put it in the bag, and just keep going.
That's it. Yeah.
And I think it's not a big thing, but I think as you say, the little things add up. And if we all did that, wow, that park's going to come out cleaner than it was.
Yeah.
And I think that's our job. It's our job as citizens to, help keep our homes clean. And if we see something like that,
Yeah.
clean it up.
Well, and it's not always easy, and I'll make it really real here for you. So, like last week, I was hiking Mount Shuckson and the North Cascades, and we literally entered the national park halfway up the hike. And this is my first mountaineering experience. I got a guide and ice axe, and it was legit. And it was over my head, but we made it to the top. But anyway, so when you go in these places, and we're all about being real on the podcast, but you got to poop in a bag because you're on glaciers and you're up there. Same with Mount Whitney, right? So you got to like have a little poop bag. And we found 2 poop bags that were like on like this camp spot, like on the glacier we had, just like buried under some rocks. Now I know that those guys did not, or girls did not do that by accident. They like tried to,
Yes.
and I'm thinking like, okay, it almost would have been better if you just pooped not in a bag and like, yeah, there's feces in like the ice, but at least it would decay within X number of years. But just to put a plastic bag and bury it up there, like that would take thousands of years. And I was so enraged by that. Like, just literally carry your crap down the mountain. It's not that hard. You had the wherewithal to do it. And again, this is an extreme example, and people are probably like cringing listening to this, but it's just, it's like, how could you, we're hiking this to see the glacier and to summit the peak, and then I don't want to see poop bags. I mean, it's just, I'm like, it just irks me so much.
No, I agree. I mean, we need to know what we're getting into. I mean, these places aren't Disneyland.
Exactly.
Even though, it's Yosemite, and there's, like you said, there's a Starbucks now. It's still a wild place.
It is,
and things happen. And I've heard stories of a tree limb falling and killing someone. And I mean, it's a wild place. It's not Disneyland. So
right.
You can't treat it as such. And when we get into these things, whether it be a long adventure or a short hike, we need to be prepared and take with us the stuff that we need to make that a good event, and be prepared to, again, pack it in, pack it out type of thing. We can't just go and assume someone's going to come behind us.
Right.
Disneyland, we know there's somebody sweeping up the trash.
Yeah, exactly.
Yosemite, it's up to us to do that.
That's right. And it shouldn't be on the national park rangers who already try to protect you from the wildlife and vice versa. Like, it's not their job to pick up the trash. And of course they will. But yeah, that is such a good point you made, Danny, because there's not a trash guy. I mean, there's somebody that picks the trash out of the garbage can, but just for you to like, just take whatever and throw it to the side. I think we beat the trash, too much here. But no, I do appreciate you going on or going that road with me, because it goes back to what we said. Like, what's the point of wanting to visit a wild place and a beautiful place if it's not either of those things? And it starts by you and being cognizant. Just be cognizant. And of course, that as a new dad, I'm like, watching what my son, for better and for worse, is picking up trash left and right. Like, while we're walking in a strip mall and he's trying to pick up a cigarette butt, I'm like, dude, no, like, leave that on the ground, or like, we'll figure it out. But he's like, Dad, and I'm like, I appreciate it, but like, don't worry about it. I'll get it. Daddy will get it. But literally, it started because on the trail, and he'll just like pick up stuff, and it's awesome. But anyway, and I'm not perfect. I'm taking notes from people like you that I've had on the podcast. Honestly,
we have to do our
you
part
do, yeah,
and be aware of it.
Well, let me go ahead and say this: I wasn't, we weren't always like that. Like, you weren't always National Park Geek, and I wasn't always the host of this podcast. Like, it started because I, learned how to like act from other people. Like, no, they don't, not to be cliche, but they don't teach it in school, all this other stuff. But it goes back to our mentality as Homo sapiens of like, oh yeah, this is our whatever, and we're going to do with what we want, not realizing, hey, when you stack a bunch of little rocks to make a trailhead, there's 100 of them, you get your cool Instagram photo, like, you're destroying an ecosystem for like these small critters and other things. You just got to think about the ramifications. And what's like the expression? It's like, oh, but it was just, what are those trail markers called? Of course, I'm drawing a blank.
Carn.
Say what?
Right. The rock cairns?
Yeah, the cairns.
Yeah.
So it's just one car, and it was like, said 1 million people, right? Like, that's exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've been in the Narrows at Zion, and they're stacked up.
Exactly.
It's like,
ugh.
I mean, if you stacked it up, took a picture, and took it down, okay. But there's really no reason for that.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
There is a need for those in the wilderness to help you stay on trail.
Yeah.
But that's not the wilderness. I mean, the trail is a river. There's
right.
No need for
exactly. This. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, we need to protect these places, and stacking rocks.
It goes back to that fine line that we were talking about, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, you're not. Our inclination is not to carve our name into a tree nowadays. I mean, people did it, but that's not how we do it now. And we know that's not good.
Well,
and so we don't do that. We shouldn't stack the rocks. We need to protect these and keep these places the way they are.
Right.
That's why we came there. We didn't come there to see stacked rocks. You can do that at home.
Well, and the other thing too, and then this is kind of the last thing I'll say on the matter, but it's unfortunately it's not 1870. We all can't be like buddy with John Muir, be bopping around in Yosemite by ourselves. Like, it's just not a thing, right? Like, we're here, there's billions of us, etc. Boo hoo, but and God knows what's going to look like 200 years from now. I mean, hopefully they still exist, but it's just not the time we live in. I think that place is for your grandpa's cabin in the middle of nowhere, and he's got a 10-acre. Sure, knock yourself out. But in these protected public lands, they're all of ours, which is awesome. But also, we all got to do our part. So anyway, I appreciate you going on that rabbit hole, me. And sorry if I beat a dead horse on that. I got a couple questions as we get towards the end of the podcast here, and going back to National Park Geek and the brand that you've created. What is the biggest hurdle that you've faced, or that you may face in the future with the National Park Geek brand?
I think just kind of keeping it current. Personally, trying to develop, new products that I think people are, want, from a merchandising standpoint. But I think every company goes through that, right? I mean, what's next?
For sure.
And I'm pretty nimble, so I can, be adaptive, and and then it's just, then it gets into business of, sourcing and producing and getting products done, and obviously costing and getting things from a business standpoint that will work with,
right.
The many park associations I work with, so they can retail. It's just one of those things. I mean, I'm in it now. This is my business, and it's just trying to come up with new things.
Yeah.
And many times,
sure.
like, wow, that's a great idea. It's just, whoa, that's going to cost a lot to get going.
Yeah.
You can invest in it. But I mean, again, I started with, some stickers and a patch, and now it's grown into, I don't know, 50 products or more at least. I mean,
incredible.
When I started looking at t-shirt designs and stuff, there's, there's a bazillion things.
Right.
So, it just coming up with new things, keeping it going.
Right.
And trying to stay relevant.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a different variation of, we talked about how to be a good steward in our national parks, but that being said, what is the number one thing that we can do to help our national parks in today's day and age? Maybe from afar, like from not actually being there.
Well, I mean, I think telling people about the parks so other people learn about them and know that they're there for them and they belong to them. Being political, and I don't mean like, I mean just like letting your congressman know.
Sure, absolutely.
Your senators know that, hey, I respect these places, I love these places, and I want you to do the same. And I'm going to say you're going to find the vast majority do. There are always some exceptions to the rule, but
sure.
I think they understand the value of it. And if they don't, well, maybe that's our chance that we can educate them a little bit of how important these places are to all of us as a country. So I think it's just kind of being aware, trying to stay as informed as you can, to support legislature that will support these places, to support your elected representatives that love and care for these places as much as you do.
Right.
That are trying to work that balance between, protecting wilderness and protecting these wild places, but also know that there's going to be some kind of, commerce nearby, and working that fine line, and understanding, that we need to be aware of the climate change and what we can do to help with that, and that might be something as simple as, turning off the lights when you're not in the room.
Sure.
Which is saving the electricity, which is actually saving you money, which is making them not produce as much electricity. So, the idea of being green, I think, really is good for us. It's not just good for the environment, but also brings additional money back into our own pockets.
Definitely.
In that sense. Planning things out. If you're out for your errands for the day, plan them in a route where you're not going back and forth and covering the same area twice. Do it in a planned fashion, so you can use as little fuel as possible, which saves you money on gas and tires. And I mean, so there's a lot of good to being green. Know that we can make our little effects to it. And you're part of a bigger picture. These national park sites are part of a greater ecosystem. Yellowstone doesn't end where the park boundary ends. It extends out. Yosemite doesn't stop where the park sign says you're leaving.
Right.
It continues. And everything kind of works together. And we need to understand that we're a part of that. We're a part of Yosemite. Yosemite is there because of us, and we're a part of that.
Right.
And we need to protect these places. And I love these places. Honestly, I mean, I think that's probably one of the most important things we can do. And whether you can get there and visit is beyond the point. I have never been to Alaska, but I know it's there waiting for me. And I still love it, and I want to protect it, even though I've never been. And I know it's some of the most beautiful land in the world. And we need to do that. And know that, yes, you may not have been there yet, but it's there for you. It does belong to you. And we need to make sure that it's there in a state that you can enjoy it when you get to it.
And that your kids and grandkids can do the same.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
No, beautiful advice. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. We're all part of it together, and it's the little things, and that's it. And then, and we can all talk about the big ones. We talk Yellowstone and I don't know, huge national parks and the ones in Alaska. And of course, picking up trash in your neighborhood park, and it's just the green space. There's only so much of it left, and awesome. Good advice. Danny, in all your travels and adventures you've been on, this is a question I'm starting to ask all my guests now. Is there a favorite piece of gear that comes to mind? If you're going to go to Yosemite tomorrow, we're going to go, you and me. What are you grabbing to bring in the car?
Well, I'm always, got my backpack, right? I mean,
yeah.
I've got a Patagonia pack, and, my day pack is, always ready to go. I don't leave home without my Nikon. So, I have, a digital DSL. My iPhone, right? I mean, I love photos, so I'm like taking pictures with both cameras nowadays. It's crazy.
It is, yeah.
And again, I have a lot of Columbia jackets for different seasons. I think it's just being adaptive, and having stuff that works for you, and having stuff that can work for you in an urban environment. Most of us are living in urban environments, and we can't always be in Yellowstone or Yosemite or Sequoia.
Right.
But when you put that jacket on, you start to think about that place.
You sure do.
God, that backpack, even if for something local,
that's so true.
Or on my backpack I have pins of places I've been, or we buy our patches, and we stick them on things. So those things become memory jolters. They take you back to that place, and that's what one of the reasons I post on Instagram often is I want to take you there for a microsecond. I mean, I want you just to, you may never have been to Yellowstone, but I want you for a brief second in your day to pause and go, wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. I want to go there. Oh, that's incredible. We need to protect that. So, when I'm posting, I'm thinking about that microsecond that I want that user to experience that place. And no, we're not there, but I think we can be there. We can mentally go there. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, we all need these little distressors. And I know for myself, when I start to go through the Instagram feed, I calm down. When I start to see these places of beauty, and no, I'm not there. I'm not in the Cascades or Olympic, but it takes me back.
Yeah.
And for even places I haven't been to, like Alaska, it calms you down, right? When you see those bears up there, and you're like, oh my God, I got to go experience that one day.
Yeah.
And the bears,
they're still there catching the salmon. Yeah.
It's like, you're like, I got to go there. But
oh man.
It's those 3 seconds. And that's what I want. I want to take you away for a millisecond and let you know that these places are here for you, and they're there for you to experience. And if you have experienced them, I want to take you back for that brief second. Man. Take you away from all the busyness that we're going on in the world.
God, I love what you said. I've actually never put 2 and 2 together about the gear. I love to ask people what their favorite piece of gear is, because I love all things gear. Like, what's that Patagonia? Do I need to go get that myself? But you really hit the nail on the head. I never thought about it like that you do get transported back to that place. Yeah. It's like when you hear the song, you think of that girl you met one time in middle school, right? Totally. But like, I have an Arc'teryx Atom LT. My wife bought it for me. Like, got on sale. Like, love this thing. It's actually the same color as your logo. It's like that forest green. And so, of course, I've worn in national parks. But then when I put it on in general, just like something about like the hoodie, like the zipper, and I'm like, ooh, I feel like I feel a sense of like I'm almost there. It literally actually, it's funny. I'm just staring across the room here. You talked about patches. We took our So you know about my son. We took him to 12 national parks before he turned 12 months old.
Uh-huh.
We kind of patched up a little vest for him
Oh, there you go.
and like
Yeah.
loaded it up with like all these patches and stuff. And he loves this thing. But I think it's important to have those pieces of special gear. And of course, in this case, they're outdoors or whatever. But it's like I started wearing my trail running shoes around town a little bit more, and probably messed them up because I wasn't running in them and walk around blacktop. But I felt more inclined to, go experience a little local state park here just by putting those on versus, I don't know, a pair of flip flops or nice sneakers, that kind of thing. So really getting in the weeds here. But I think that's so true. That's just one of the cool quirks we have as human beings about you touch a piece of gear, you hear a song, it just kind of takes you to that one place that's really special for sure. Danny, it's been an awesome hour-long conversation. We've obviously talked all things National Park Geek, and you've got incredible Instagram accounts. What is the handle? Where can people find out more about your website and other merchandise that you have and things that you offer for people that are interested in all things national parks?
Well, I think first, if you're not following Instagram, National Park Geek, pictures every day. I've been posting every day since it started.
Yeah.
Every day. I mean, I've never taken a day off. So I'm always trying to share the beauty of the park. So if you're not following already, look us up on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then, website is nationalparkgeek.com. And, we've got all of our products that are available there. And then look for our products in the park visitor centers.
Yeah.
We're in stuff coast to coast from Statue of Liberty to Guam. And, many parks in between, and we're always expanding into new parks, and we have different products in different parks. So, support your local park when you're there. If you already have a National Park Geek sticker, grab one for a friend.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Know that the proceeds are going back to that park directly, and the proceeds when you purchase from National Park Geek, I give back also to national parks. I'm a member of 1% for the Planet, so I'm giving back every year. So I think it's important to give back and be a part of it and try to help with some of the solutions. So I encourage everyone to follow on Instagram, be inspired, and we're on Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that too. But Instagram's the main feed
for sure.
And check that out and show us your beautiful pictures.
That's awesome. No, I appreciate that. All right, Danny, my last question for you here, and I ask all my guests, and yours is going to be a little bit twofold. One, what is your personal next adventure? And also, what's next for National Park Geek?
My next adventure, I'm still on hold. Honestly, with COVID, I don't think I've gone more than 12 miles from home.
Tough times.
I'm trying to do my little part and stay close. And I know many people are getting out, and that's fine. And I will. So my next adventure probably be, I'm working on a thing, potentially going to Zion in the near future again. So that'll probably be on the short list. I can see potentially just getting out to Joshua Tree for a night.
Yeah.
Just to see the
Beautiful,
stars again.
both of them.
And then what's next for National Park Geek? I don't know, world domination.
Yeah, of course. Obviously.
We're trying to expand the brand to, keep sharing the goodness of the parks.
Yeah.
And every day to trying to work at it through Instagram and letting people know about these places that are out there. And, obviously, from a business standpoint, trying to have the products available, where people are going.
For sure. Awesome.
But, it's growing, and and it's a great thing, and it's a beautiful community. As you get into some things, and you're not sure, but I can just tell you, everybody I've worked with the associations and the park, hopefully be a part of the solution. Helping make just a little bit of difference and make things a little bit better. And you never know how it's going to touch somebody or touch something. And that's, why I keep doing it, because I think these places deserve it. These places belong to all of us, and we need to, go experience it. There's so many places I want to go to, so many national park sites that I'll post, and I'm like, I've never been there. And I've been to a lot, but I haven't been to all 400 plus. And I get intrigued all the time. I'm like, wow, well, how can I figure this one into the next
Right.
trip? And that's, I think, part of it is just, where can I go to next, and knowing that these places are there. They're everywhere.
That's it.
So even if you're going to someplace like New York City, know that there's, a dozen national park sites within New York City that you can go and experience.
Yeah.
Or, shortly outside of the city, and, Long Island, there, Sagamore Hill, which is
Right.
Teddy Roosevelt's home. I mean, these are incredible places that we all should go and experience. And so encouraging people to do that, and to be a part of the country.
Awesome.
Be a part of what this place is.
Perfect. Beautiful. Awesome advice. Well, Danny, I really appreciate your time for coming on the podcast. A little old, adventure bound, but again, everything you've created with National Park Geek, it's incredible. I'm a huge fan, a raving fan, obviously, before we even started chatting about the podcast. And what you're doing is inspirational. It's downright awesome. So thank you for helping give back to the National Park, everything, and the association, and just everything related to all things national parks. And thank you for what you're doing, because you're really doing a lot of good for the world.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Take care. We'll see you later.